Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have been asked to contribute, to make my small contribution to a discussion or sharing a view about agriculture, livestock production before the Green Deal and after implementation of the Green Deal. I'd be happy if the things we are going to talk about are something that we really do not take lightly, because what will be expressed here is very close to reality, which can happen. It's possible reality. The present condition of the Czech agriculture, where there are new figures for 2020 in comparison with 1990 for the 30 years of functioning of our agriculture. So if I make that comparison, we can see that we are in a condition we have 40% of cattle, 28.9 milking cows, milking 64.2, and beef 32.5, and that is today in comparison with the year 1990 in percents. So we must note that no developed country has admitted such a development, perhaps with the exception of the Slovak Republic. In the event of an outbreak of conflict in Europe or anywhere around or somewhere around, or if there is a natural disaster, the population would be without sufficient needs for milk, dairy product, but mainly meat, eggs, fruit and vegetables, potatoes, and similarly. A weakening of the supply of organic fertilizers to the soil has been minimum. So over those many years, there is a great danger of reducing soil fertility and devastating the soil. Of course, there are some spheres where livestock production is developed and the situation is okay, but there are some other areas in this country where the livestock production is really minimum. And so if 20 or 30 years organic mass was not used, but only a straw was burned, the situation is more complex than now. Situation with milk. In the Czech Republic, we produce 75,000 milk per 100 hectares of farmland. And in Germany, it is 170,000 liters, so 20. Germany, the Netherlands, 621,000 liters, which is 828% that much. So it's ridiculous. We hear from our quote-unquote expert that there's a surplus of milk and that the livestock numbers should be reduced. Even the last piece of cattle will be excessive, because in the old EU countries, the production over the, I don't know how many years since the abolition of quotas, by 7%. And in Germany, 29%, 7% in Germany, 29% in Ireland. With regards to pig stock, the situation is even more disastrous. It was 1,404,000 in 2020. It's 29.3% in comparison with the year 1990. Sows only 87,000 pieces. Another drop, yet another drop has appeared this year. So I think the estimates for the year 2021 will be still for some 7% smaller. Pork in tons is 294,000 600 pieces less. That is 38.5% less than in 1990. This is incredible, but in 30 years of efforts to devastate the Czech livestock production, it's been possible to bring it down to a volume less than 30%. While the mentioned EU old countries have raised their production levels several times. Though we have a common market, in 1990 the production in those countries was almost at the same level or higher by some 10–11%. If the agricultural policy is not set in favor of extensive production, but in favor of the real farmers, which we have sufficient numbers of, we would not be on the verge of liquidation of some livestock sectors, like, for example, pork meat production. Very briefly about the plant production, the decline of livestock production to an average of 1/3 should logically result in an increase in crop production. But what is the reality? The agricultural soil or land in hectares at the present time is 3,493,608, which is 82.6%. For only 30 years, we've reduced the land by agricultural land by 17.4%, which is incredible for me. Of course, a part disappeared in construction projects around the motorways, but a great part also disappeared in conversion to lasting grasslands and other soils. What will be the continuation in the decades to come? A few figures in the when the livestock production in permanent prices, that is production itself different from units, dropped to a half and less. The cereals are grown on 57.3% arable land in comparison with 61% in 1990. When the livestock production was more than double as high. Just for illustration, in 1936, cereals were planted or grown on 58% of arable land, and instead of the land released to fodder crops after reduction of the hectare size, which were for livestock production. Well, what happened was that we have not been able to increase fruits and vegetables demand with high demand in labor, but we have come to a reduction rather of the size of areas of fruits and vegetables by 2/3, which is very impropitious and actually has an impact on the environments in the sense that 2/3 of fruits and vegetables being imported. We consume imported vegetables. We do not know on what type of soils it has been grown, what have been the chemical treatment of it, what fertilizers have been used, whether they may have been grown perhaps on contaminated soils. And how about the nourishment of the poor, that is potato, which fertilizes soil, is an excellent pre-crop, emergent pre-crop, clears land without use of chemicals, and so it is very labor incentives. In 1989, we grew 115,446 hectares. In 2020, we grew potatoes only on 23,877 hectares. That is 20.8%. and of which we released 5,774 hectares for starch production. It is necessary for us to import most of the potatoes from Spain, Turkey, Egypt, and other countries where we do not know the conditions of potato growing. We could, of course, support production and construction of tempered warehouses, employ people, and produce many products from our own produce, because we almost exclusively import potato products. We must see that it is possible to grow what we are missing. Why can we be successful in commodities where we are not self-sufficient? First of all, the natural conditions for production in the Czech Republic are optimal for the production of for the making of all products which belong to the temperate zone. We have relative sufficient amounts of rainfall. Soil structure is good. We have sufficient organic matter and temperatures suitable for vegetation time for the temperate zone. The soils are from loamy soils for vegetable production to heavy soils suitable for cereal cultivation. We have also good production and technical conditions. They are of an exceptional good level, with the exception of insufficient supply of organic matter from manure and insufficient liming, where we need to keep the optimum acid factor, really acidity. We have farmers or peasants farming intensively, but also sparingly. Yields of grain, potatoes, sugar beet, rape, fruit, vegetables, fodder crops at the level of the farmers in Western European countries, with the huge advantage of our concentration of production. We have high labor productivity and the best quality technology offered in the world to which we have access. We have one of the highest dairy cow yields in Europe, approximately 9,000 liters per cow per year. As far as intensive pork production is concerned in repopulated farms, we compete without any problems with advanced farms in Western Europe. But we also are cheaper with lower labor costs and lower feed prices. But of course, this is compensated by several times as high subsidies as we have in the countries of Western Europe. The only thing that we lack is the agricultural literacy of alleged or would-be agricultural experts to set up motivating conditions for business, and their ignorance of global trends in agriculture, which tend towards the production of cheap food, rather than selling the cheapest, subsidized, and quality suspect food. Those who preach setting caps in EU and trade from national resources subsidize the merging of smaller economies into larger ones, as it is the case in the Federal Republic of Germany, and they do everything that will contribute to concentration of production, increased labor productivity, and better use of machinery. Our agricultural captains have not understood for the 31 years that our contemporaries in the EU are not interested in a balanced common market, but rather destruction of our food market and its domination by their own products. And this is evidenced by the already mentioned multiple production of the different commodities per 100 hectares of agricultural land. The expected implementation of the Green Deal includes but is not limited to the reduced pesticide use by 30%, reduce the use of industrial fertilizers by only 30%, reducing antimicrobials for animals by 50%. Then, of course, reducing production of conventional agriculture in favor of organic farming to something between 25 and 30%, and of course, reducing livestock numbers due to methane generation. The expected implementation of the Green Deal, those restrictions are very incomprehensible because they do not reflect the current level of use of both pesticides per hectare of agricultural land and industrial manures or fertilizers, industrial fertilizers per hectare of arable land in the EU countries. So, the use of pesticides. The Czech Republic uses 1.89 kilogram of active substances per 1 hectare of agricultural land. Germany, 3.45 kilogram of active substances per 1 hectare. France, 3.85 kilogram of active substances per 1 hectare of agricultural land. Spain, 5.65 kilogram of active substance per 1 hectare. And Italy, even 7.8 kilogram of active substances per 1 hectare of agricultural land. If the Czech Republic reduces the use of pesticides to 50%, it will result not only in reduction of yields, but also the quality rather of products will not be standard. It will be just molds coming to grow in plants. If countries with the highest pesticide use reduce their pesticides use, there will only be less overuse and less waste, but there will be no fundamental change in quality of production levels. Our lower production will again free the domestic markets in favor of imports. And a similar situation is about fertilizers, of course. So in this case, industrial fertilizers, the situation is as follows. The Czech Republic consumes approximately 124 kilograms of net nutrients per 1 hectare of arable land. Switzerland, where we see everything being environmentally friendly, it's approximately 200 kilograms, also twice as much. That is net nutrients per 1 hectare. Germany, approximately 220. The Netherlands, approximately 240 kilogram, and Belgium, approximately 290 kilogram net nutrients. So we are somewhere in the middle of the other levels, sometimes even at 1/3 level of other countries. The Czech Republic has gradually reduced the consumption of industrial fertilizers to the mentioned level of 124 kilograms of net nutrients per 1 hectare of arable land. Even though before joining the EU, the consumption was around 300 kilograms per 1 hectare of arable land. So there was a 60% decrease, so there is no reason to reduce it further by another 30%, as the impact of further reductions, any further reductions, would reduce the yields and the quality of the produced food. The 50% restriction of antimicrobials for animals, again, a fiction. I dare say why it is so. Many EU 27 countries use antibiotics several times more than the Czech Republic. For example, in pork production, Spain uses antibiotics across the board and exports meat to the whole world, which accounts for more than 70% of its own production. The Czech Republic is affected by the highest percentage of Spanish pork imports. If we in the Czech Republic use medicines. We do so only selectively, and we also restrict antimicrobials by 50%. And if this is so, the appropriate treatment will not take place, and the animals will suffer, and it will not be possible to breed them at all. It is difficult to understand this requirement when in human medicine the consumption of those substances is ever growing, ever increasing, and most countries are funding extensive research to obtain new and more effective substances based on these substances. This is again an empty gesture. Yes, there should be a reduction of those substances, but under the influence of research and of new medicine. But they should always be used selectively and according to the actual need of level of consumption in countries. The consumption should be reduced. Reduction of other reductions that I've mentioned, reduction of production agriculture by 25 to 30% in favor of organic farming. The Czech Republic has 15.7% of its agricultural land under organic regime. Austria has about 5% of its agricultural land under such a regime. The Federal Republic of Germany has 4.5% of its agricultural land under organic farming. So if in the whole of EU organic production were to shift to 30% of farmland, there would be food shortages, because as production in this regime, that is per hectare, is barely half that under this organic regime. In our country, it's just under 30%, not even 30%. What is the biggest tragedy is reducing the livestock numbers in all EU countries in the same extent. It is absolute nonsense again. In Czech Republic, per 1 hectare of agricultural land, there is 0.38 livestock units. We like to say that it's a half. It's not per agriculture, but per arable health. And we have to use the same yardstick to do the measurements to be true. The Federal Republic of Germany, 1.4 such units per 1 hectare on land. So it's 3 times more than 3 times more. In the Netherlands, there are almost 3 livestock units per 1 hectare of land. So 8 times as many. 8 times as many, yes. And all of us will reduce in the same degree. It's ridiculous. And from what follows from these planned measures is that in the Czech Republic, per 1 hectare of agricultural land, we will breed less than 0.2 livestock units, and in the Netherlands, it's 1.5 such units, which is almost 8 times more than in this country. The theory is how to solve the 2030 Farm Bill. It's not only utopia, but it's a tragedy, not only for the production of sufficient food, but also for the environment in countries with negligible levels of livestock production, such as the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, and others. If the Green Deal is implemented in this country to the extent as planned, what will happen is further reduction of self-sufficiency in staple foods, which is already unsafe, with the average for all staple products now being about 55%. Fail to provide enough food at a time when we have high living standards can lead to civil unrest, and food imports will then come from mainly from Mercosur countries, where EU standards are not assured. Reduction in food quality due to the use of products that have been banned in nutrition in this country. drugs already banned in our country, the number of coccidiostats, and in those countries, of course, they are permitted for use. The level of quantity of domestic products cannot be substituted with the same quality from the imports. This will affect the health and reduce the life expectancy of our population. The greatest damage will arise from a reduction of production agriculture in favor of organic farming and the introduction of up to 10% of uncultivated land. And now conclusion. What will all this bring about? Mainly in the environmental sphere. There will be enormous shortfall of natural organic fertilizers, which will mainly cause further reduction of the percentage of humus in the soil. Quite the contrary than what is claimed by the present media experts. There will be poor soil water retention level, sown water and grass actually, and the grass has not been cultivated for 20 years. Of course, it will not retain water. Further disturbance of the fine-grained soil structure. There will be further acidification of soil. There will be a compaction of soil, lack of air in the soil. Of course, the most fundamental things are connected with this reduction of soil animals that decompose organic matter in soil. We have been talking about that for a long time, but do everything for worsening the situation. The above mentioned will not benefit the environment, but we do it because of that. We think we do it from the desk, but on the contrary, we reduce the arability of land, and we will expose our population to a big danger with regard to quality and sufficient quantities of food. Thank you for your attention.
How the Green Deal will impact agriculture? It's a general question, and we are looking for a short question. Do you think we can manage? So I just discussed it in details. The main trouble would be that if the reduction proposed and declared will really be introduced to practice, then we will have less Czech food stuff because we will have to reduce food. We could not have to produce whatever we wish to produce, even though we are producing only 10 to 15% compared to the other countries. And this is not acceptable for us. We simply need to criticize and act against proposals that are not based on practical knowledge. Well, I just wanted to highlight, of course, we can criticize that I'm in the Agriculture Committee, and day before yesterday, I have stated already that whatever is suggested by the expert from EU reminds me what I remember when I was a child from 1950s, when subjective decision-making was made based on ideology, irrespective of reality. But in a few years, then it was clear that it leads to catastrophe, and those who declared that were punished. But now it is quite noticeable that after several years of managing developed countries, we are reaching almost the same stage. So they just thanked me for my paper, and in fact, I don't care what Mr. David is saying, because we, brackets, smart ones, we are in majority. So, Mr. Jandejsek, how the upcoming changes of the agriculture policy of EU would be reflected in the purchase prices and consumer prices? Well, it's quite sad, because currently few chains are selling food, or they are selling majority of the volume, and they did not understand that once we have to pay more for electricity and so on, and prices are growing for almost everything. They simply don't understand that we cannot sell it for the same price. Yeah, we would like to sell it for minimal price, so people would have acceptable prices. Nevertheless, at this quite threatening situation. So once they cause our bankruptcy, they will import everything from abroad and they will double the prices. That's what happened with fruit and vegetable in the Czech Republic. Anyway, we can check their retail stores and we can just speak with farmers who are delivering food to them, and we will see where is the margin. Of course, there are products that are interesting from marketing point of view. So few products will be sold under the purchasing price. We will attract consumers to our retail stores, and then they will buy the rest for totally different price with margins of 100 or 200%, not 10%. So we can just evaluate what is going on, and we know it is happening like that, but it is difficult to promote it in media because media are paid by somebody else, because majority of advertisements in billions crowns last year, it was in fact co-paid by retail chains. So the question, hello, I'm interested why we are not self-sufficient in agriculture. For instance, why do we have to import onion from New Zealand? This is a shame of Czech Ministry of Agriculture. So who would like to answer? Well, I don't think we should blame Czech farmers. Maybe partially Ministry of Agriculture, because if they work in the positions of directors in the ministry, if we have true experts there that worked in agriculture, knowing how food is grown, they will definitely set totally different motivation scheme compared to the currently implemented one. And then we have, in fact, agreed on the accession treaty to EU when the conditions will be equal for everyone. But this is not happening in practice. The subsidies from EU are much lower for the Czech Republic, and in fact, possibility of future subsidies and motivation of farmers do not correspond with the need, or in fact it does not motivate farmers at all. Thank you very much. So last question for Mr. Jandejsek. Why can't we be self-sufficient in the Czech Republic, 100% in any food commodity? We are self-sufficient in beef because today we consume only 7 kilograms, but in 1990 we have consumed 24 kilograms. So the consumption of beef dropped significantly. We have enough, and we exported, plus sugar we also exported. We have received numbers of consumption of milk. For instance, we are self-sufficient in milk, for instance, butter 60%, dairy products 80%, and when we summarize it, we are not self-sufficient even in milk. And what is possible, or I can say we can be self-sufficient if money allocated to agriculture would be distributed where farmers are motivated to produce at the best quality. Then it will take short time, 5 to 10 years, and we are able to be self-sufficient. in the basic commodities, of course. We can be 100% self-sufficient, but we would have to restructure the motivation. Nowadays, the grassland would be promoted. There are some nonsense ideas, and people who do not produce anything will receive the money. So those decisions will be negatively evaluated in the future, I feel.